Hi everyone, welcome to this talk on implementing HIPAA compliance using Odoo. Hi everyone, welcome to this talk on implementing HIPAA compliance using Odoo. This is specifically meant for companies in the healthcare industry or doing business with healthcare and the medical device industry. I'm Faisal Basar, I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Vista Solutions. So in this talk, we will cover an introduction about us, about what Vista is, and we'll jump into an overview of HIPAA, what includes in implementing HIPAA compliance. We will focus mostly on the enterprise application perspective and what you need to do at the infrastructure level and the application level. We'll close off with a demo for HIPAA compliance. So a little bit on Vista. Vista is a gold partner of Odoo based in California. We help our customers in implementing ERP systems from end to end, right from understanding their business requirements, implementing it in the ERP system. We train people, train users. We also have support and migration services. So we are an end-to-end company, partner of Odoo, implementing Odoo for our customers. We have presence in multiple countries. We have our offices in US and Canada and a development center in India. So a little bit on HIPAA. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. You've probably heard about HIPAA. That's the reason you are here. It also was enacted as a federal law, so which means complying with HIPAA is really important for companies who deal with HIPAA. So there are two organizations essentially which are covered under HIPAA. These are covered entities and business associates. So you might actually fall into one of the two categories, and there are different requirements for each one. Covered entities are essentially any company which directly handles patient data, right? So this would be healthcare providers, but also maybe service companies which have a direct relationship with patients, which touch the patients of their customers. So you would be a covered entity in that case. Business associates, if you are providing other services but not exposed to patient data to provide those services, it could be IT provider, right? For hospitals, these are business associates. So HIPAA regulates both of these entities. So HIPAA is essentially about privacy and security. Like it's on two fundamentals to protect the health information or PHI data, personal health information data about an individual or a patient, and also providing rights to the individuals on their PHI data, right? What can be done with their data or not. And the security is related more to the software aspect, which is what we are dealing with here. It's also called ePHI, which is PHI data in electronic format, which is in systems, software systems. And these rules regards to making sure that this ePHI data is secure and it cannot be destroyed and it's available. So complying with HIPAA privacy and security requirements is multifold. It includes some administrative processes which you need to implement as a company and institute formal document and controls. In this talk, we are restricting or limiting ourselves into the applications, enterprise application, which you use on a regular basis. So talking up, and why is it important? Why is HIPAA important? Because it's a federal law, and there are several penalties included in the HIPAA law. So it's a law with enough teeth. There are financial penalties included in that. Also, the overall impact to the perception of your business. If you have a HIPAA violation and it really impacts your credibility as a provider of services or whatever you're doing in the healthcare domain. So this is the reason complying with HIPAA is really important. So jumping into enterprise applications. So we talked about implementing HIPAA in different levels in your company. One is the administrative processes, tools, training of your people, and then the software, the enterprise applications which we use. So we are jumping into enterprise applications. It is essentially at two levels. One is at infrastructure level, and the other one is the application level. So implementing an HIPAA is at these two levels based on how we implement it. So if you look at enterprise applications, there are several public cloud providers which enable hosting HIPAA compliant software. So some of them are AWS, there is Google Cloud, there is Azure. Some of these big ones have tools which help you build HIPAA compliant infrastructure. They will also sign a BAA agreement with you, stating that if you are building your infrastructure based on their guidelines and their tools, how they recommend, they will sign a BAA agreement with you. Most of the time it's hands off, it's completely online. With these big providers, you just go download a document and sign a BAA agreement with them. So this is a reference architecture in AWS environment. This is how, using the tools provided by AWS, you can implement a HIPAA compliant infrastructure. Again, this Google Cloud and Azure also provides similar tools and guidelines. The most important is guidelines. They provide architectural guidelines of how to implement HIPAA in their cloud environment, and then you will be HIPAA compliant from the infrastructure and hosting perspective. So a lot of this is essentially about encryption in transit and encryption at rest. These are the two concepts in HIPAA. So all the traffic outside of your network and within your network has to be encrypted. All data, including backups, including logs, all of them needs to be encrypted. And then, of course, you have to make sure, follow the regular guidelines for making sure your environment is secure. There you have this firewall right here, which AWS provides, which takes care of a lot of security and vulnerabilities. So using these tools, you're able to implement HIPAA. This is just a reference architecture. If you have more questions, reach out to us. We've not necessarily showed auto scaling in this diagram or much of failover between zones of AWS. If you require auto scaling or failover, then you might want to add that in. But this is specifically implementing HIPAA requirements in AWS. So moving on, let's talk about what is involved in implementing HIPAA at the application level. So this is Odoo, at the Odoo level. So there are certain features which you will have to implement in Odoo to make it HIPAA, to bring it to the level of HIPAA compliance. So these are related to user access and security. A lot of these modules are available within Odoo as a configuration, or they're available as community modules. Some of them we as Business Solution have implemented for our customers. If you need them, reach out to us. So, but essentially you can use out-of-box Odoo, use some community modules, and maybe a few specific modules and get Odoo to be HIPAA compliant. So some of them which we look at is auto log off. This is a very important requirement that if users have not used it for a certain timeout, it should log them out, and limiting login attempts, right? So how many times you have unsuccessful login attempts, that is very important. You need to have a strong password policy and an expiration of passwords. This is very important from HIPAA perspective. Role-based access control. So the guidelines of HIPAA is you need to give access to the data only on an as needed basis. So basically, if you have, say, a physician and you're a healthcare clinic, you have a physician and you have a front desk, right? So the physician needs to access more of the patient data, but the front desk might not need access to all of the health data. So that is why role-based access is very important, and Odoo provides a lot of tools inbuilt to implement these tools. Now you need to work with the provider which understands what HIPAA requirements are so that you can configure them in your Odoo system. You need to be able to track unique IDs for each user, and Odoo always does unique ID. You need to be able to log login attempts and a lot of logs which are maintained. There are certain audit log requirements for ePHI which can be achieved in Odoo with a community module, but it needs to be implemented in a proper way so that it is compliant and in requirement, but also does not adversely impact your performance. Again, we talked about encryption. It has to be encrypted at rest and in transit. You achieve that with the infrastructure and some requirements, some implementation in the Odoo application. Of course, you need to sign BA agreement with your IT providers, and you need to make sure they are compliant and aware of what is HIPAA and what entails HIPAA requirement. So we will now move on and look at some of the features of how it's implemented at Odoo level. So we'll start a demo of how HIPAA is implemented using Odoo. We log in with this screen. I wanted to show you this. So I have not used the session for a timeout, and it kicks me out, essentially asks me to log in again. So starting off with showing how to implement log off in Odoo, I will log in as a user, and I will show you where the parameter is for implementing auto log off. And this is a configurable parameter where you can set after how many seconds of inactivity you want the user to be kicked out, essentially, and ask them to log in again. So this is where you could set this configuration setting. As I mentioned, some of the features I show will be out of box Odoo, some of them available through community add-ons, some additional features which we have implemented. But mostly using out of box Odoo and community add-ons, you could get to a HIPAA compliant state. I wanted to also show you the settings for password policy. And this is where the community modules, these are the different options it gives you. You can select how often you want the password to expire, how many characters in length, how many lowercase, uppercase, special characters, and all of these settings can be done from this page by an admin user. Now, if the user tries to set a password, I'll do it from here. There are several ways of doing it, but I'll do it from here to show you, and maybe have test 1, 2, 3, or some of this kind of password. What this module will do is, hey, this password is not compliant with the policy, and this is what you should be doing. So it prevents you from using a password which is not very secure. We now move and look at some of the audit logging features. So as I mentioned, it should prevent you from there are some rules which basically it makes it HIPAA, it's necessary for HIPAA. So for instance, you should not be able, you have to restrict what data can be imported and exported out of the system. So there will be settings to prevent that from happening. if you want to see some of the logging features, maybe we go into a user, and this is demo data. There's no patient data in this demo. This is just out of box Odoo demo data. But this is some of the settings which we have implemented, where you can have mark a contact as patient and set its patient ID. This way, it will start logging access to the data. You don't want to log access. So someone is going and reading the record. You don't want to log all of those access. Only for patient data, you want to log it. Otherwise, your database will be filled with billions of entries. Because remember, in HIPAA, it's not just edits and modifications, it's also access to the data. Someone opens the record, someone exports it, all that needs to be logged. So you need to limit that and only to patient data. So what I will do is probably go into this record. I've made this as a patient record for Edwin, and make a note, checking for his reports, and maybe save this. So what happens is the system works in the background and stores the data. So here, if you go into the log, you will see that all this activity happening in Edwin's record. So if you scroll through it, and this is again a community module which lets you do that. If you scroll through this, you will see that I made the entry for in a certain field. I made a change and I accessed all that data. So again, you need to manage this. Log can get really full. You need to make sure what is logged, and also probably clean up the data regularly. You might want to have a separate data warehouse where you're actually storing all, like say 5 years of data. You might want to move it out of your transactional system into a data warehouse for audit purposes. So this is essentially most of the settings. To control it, I will go into system parameters and show you some of the other settings. Well, it's the session inactivity timeout, minimum password length, and other things which are implemented in to make Odoo HIPAA compliant. So that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We have several implementations of Odoo in the healthcare industry for different for device manufacturers and other companies. Feel free to reach out to us, and we would like to talk to you more. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening and good afternoon in the US. Welcome to the Q&A. My name is Jose Hidalgo, and I'll be the interviewer during this Q&A. Joining us is Faisal Basar, CTO and co-founder at Vista Solutions. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Jose. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So I think we can go and get right into it. This is a very interesting topic, very important. Security is really key when it comes to enterprise solutions. So we're going to go ahead and ask you the first question. Do you need to sign a BAA with your solution provider?
Good question. So yes, a BAA, which is a business associate agreement, is required by anyone who your business is working with, right? So, which means your hosting provider, right? So if you're hosting on public cloud or some other cloud, you need to ensure that you sign a BAA agreement, a business associate agreement with them. Also, mostly the solution, the implementation consultants, which would be, say, we are implementing for you Odoo, right? in that case, it is required that you sign a BAA agreement with us as well. So that's why when you are looking at an infrastructure provider, make sure that they sign a BAA agreement with you. The good thing, and which is what I pointed out in the talk, is public cloud providers like AWS, Azure, they will sign a BA agreement with you. So they will, you can just go online, and the agreement states that if you follow the guidelines which they have done, then it's valid, right? Which means you have to follow the guidelines they've given, the architecture which they recommend, follow that, and they will, it's basically you just go online, download a document, and you get it signed. You don't even need to talk to anyone to get that signature from the bigger public cloud providers. So yeah, it is very important for you to have this agreement in place in case of a HIPAA audit. This is required.
Thank you for the answer. Okay, we are going to go for our second question from Hans. Hi, you said everything needs to be encrypted. Does this apply to the Postgres database as well? And if so, how do you do it?
Correct. And yes, everything needs to be encrypted as per HIPAA. And this is actually, Jose, uh, general for any compliance, right? So if you are looking at PCI compliance or any other compliance, these concepts hold true. We focus this talk only on the healthcare industry, but it's kind of generic. So the concept is you encrypt both at rest and in transit, right? So which is when network traffic is in transit, like throughout your network. So it's very important to understand even outside. So as it hits your network from the internet, public internet, and also within your networks. Okay, so you have Odoo, right? You have Odoo on, say, Docker or whatever, however you've structured it, and Odoo is talking to Postgres, right? The traffic between Odoo and Postgres also need to be encrypted. It might be within your intranet, within your VPC, a virtual private cloud. It still needs to be encrypted. Also, anything stored in the database needs to be encrypted. Your Postgres needs to be encrypted, just in case, say you take backups, right? And then someone gets a hold of the backup, they should not be able to restore the backup and see the HIPAA data, right? That is the reason you also need to uh, encrypt your database. Now, a lot of public cloud providers have a solution. You don't need to do much other than selecting the right configuration so that your entire database uh, is encrypted. Amazon has RDS. You can set it up so that everything is encrypted. Also, there are native Postgres solution which lets you encrypt the database itself and the traffic between Odoo. So it has to be an SSL connection between Odoo and Postgres, though it's not exposed. It still need to be encrypted. And I'm stressing this because a lot of people miss that point, right? Like, hey, this is just my internal servers. Any traffic has to be encrypted. Okay, and then backups. People forget backups. Now, you're probably taking backups of your Postgres. So you need to ensure your backups are also encrypted. Again, there are a lot of solution based on your cloud provider, which just gives you solution for managing these backups encrypted. Uh, Last but not the least is log files. I see that being missed by a lot of people. So Odoo, right? Odoo generates these log files, and there can be HIPAA data within the log file. It could just be the IP address of your customer, right? And you have a healthcare website, a telehealth website, for instance, or you're a medical device manufacturer. Even the IP address needs to be encrypted. So your log files, your Nginx logs, Odoo log files, you need to have a solution for encrypting them. So I hope I covered everything. Sorry, it was a long answer, but it's important to understand the scope of this encryption.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. I mean, we definitely need just a very, very good answer according to this topic. In terms of maybe we have 1 more minute. Um, so I, I think there's another question I just pop up from the same person. But if the HD is encrypted, it should be okay.
Sorry, if what is encrypted?
But but if the HD is encrypted, it should be okay. I don't know.
If the entire hard disk is encrypted, yes, it should be okay. Again, there are solutions for key management, also requirement for how you're storing the keys, how you're managing them. But if your entire hard disk is encrypted, it's fine. But remember, the traffic also needs to be encrypted, so don't forget that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap up this Q&A. Is there anything you would like to mention before we go and move into the private
Sure.
session?
So I would like to stress that you need to work with a company like an implementation consultant who understands the regulatory environment. It's very important. And as I mentioned, some of the things you can miss one point or the other. So it's always very critical to work with a provider who understands. So make sure you do your due diligence, make sure you ask for reference with whoever you want to work with. Make sure you're doing that. So that would be my advice to people.
Thank you very much for your time, Faisal. I'll see you next time.
Thank you,
We'll
Jose.
move off to the private link now. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you, Jose. Thank you.